Imagine the scene. Humanity's very beginning, set in a world fresh from the hands of God, filled with purpose and promise. The story of Adam and Eve has been recounted for generations, depicting them as the foundational parents of all human life. And yet, within this ancient story lies a mystery. If Adam and Eve were the first humans, created directly by God, how did their son Cain find a wife? And how did he build a life beyond Eden? This question has puzzled readers for centuries, yet by examining Scripture closely and exploring historical texts, we uncover a variety of interpretations that offer potential answers, some of which may surprise you. Let's journey through the events described in Genesis to uncover the background of this mystery. According to the Bible, Adam was formed from the dust of the earth, and God breathed life into him. Eve was then created from Adam's rib, and together they were placed in the Garden of Eden, united as the first human family. Their story, however, isn't merely one of idyllic beginnings. It is also marked by human choice, struggle, and consequence. Soon after their creation, Adam and Eve made the fateful decision to disobey God's command, leading to their exile from Eden and the entrance of sin into the world. Outside the garden, they began their family and had 2 sons, Cain and Abel. These 2 siblings represent the first generations in a world still touched by the memory of paradise, but now exposed to sin and strife. Cain, the elder, became a farmer, working the ground, while Abel became a shepherd, caring for the flocks. At one point, they both brought offerings to God. Cain offered the fruits of his labor from the earth, while Abel presented the firstborn of his flock. God accepted Abel's offering but did not accept Cain's, leading to a deep resentment in Cain's heart, a resentment that grew into jealousy and culminated in tragedy. In a moment of rage, Cain killed Abel, committing the first recorded act of murder in human history. God confronts Cain after this event, asking him, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain responds dismissively, "Am I my brother's keeper?" This moment marks a profound shift. Humanity has moved from simple disobedience in Eden to outright violence. Cain's actions did not go unnoticed, and God condemns him to wander the earth. But here's where the narrative takes an interesting turn. As Cain laments his punishment, he expresses fear that others will seek to kill him, and God places a mark on him to protect him. Then, shortly after, the Bible states that Cain knew his wife, and they had a son, Enoch, and Cain built a city named after him. Here, questions naturally arise. If Adam and Eve were the first humans, who could this wife of Cain be? Where did she come from? And who were these people that Cain feared might kill him? These questions form the basis of one of the most intriguing mysteries in biblical interpretation. To understand potential answers, we can consider multiple perspectives, including traditional interpretations, the possibility of other early humans, and extra-biblical writings. One widely held interpretation, especially among traditional scholars, suggests that Adam and Eve had other children beyond those explicitly named in the Bible. Genesis 5:4 states, "After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters." This suggests that Adam and Eve's family grew to include many children who married and multiplied. Given the longevity of Adam and Eve, many generations could have sprung up within a short span of time, possibly providing wives and a community for Cain, even if it meant marrying a sister or niece. In ancient cultural contexts, marriage between siblings or close relatives was not unusual, especially in early populations where options were limited. The idea of Cain marrying a close family member aligns with accounts from early Genesis, where human longevity was significantly longer, allowing the population to grow quickly. However, there's another perspective to consider: the possibility of other human beings existing alongside Adam and Eve's descendants. This interpretation, although more speculative, raises fascinating questions. Some scholars and theologians propose that God could have created other humans apart from Adam and Eve, or that the others whom Cain feared may have represented subsequent generations of Adam's and Eve's descendants. already dispersed into various parts of the earth. While Genesis focuses on the story of Adam and Eve and their immediate family, this view suggests the possibility of a broader human narrative beyond the initial creation story. One text that offers additional context, though not part of the traditional biblical canon, is the Book of Jubilees, often referred to as Little Genesis. This ancient work provides additional details about the early history of humanity, including the names of Adam and Eve's daughters. According to the Book of Jubilees, Cain's wife was named Awan, and Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve, married a woman named Azurah. These names offer an interesting glimpse into the early lineage of humanity as imagined by Jewish tradition. Although Jubilees is considered an apocryphal text and is not part of the canonical Bible, it remains a valuable resource for understanding some of the historical and cultural beliefs about the origins of humanity. Another detail the Book of Jubilees provides is the notion that Cain founded a city after his exile. This city, named Enoch after his son, represented the beginnings of human civilization, a society that would grow and develop outside Eden. The creation of cities and organized communities is a remarkable point in Cain's story, suggesting that humanity quickly transitioned from isolated families to established settlements. The challenges surrounding Cain's story reflect larger themes about human nature, morality, and free will. Through the murder of Abel, we see humanity's capacity for violence, jealousy, and pride, while God's response to Cain, protecting him even after his sin, demonstrates a complex relationship between divine justice and mercy. The Bible, in its focus on these early stories, invites readers to consider the consequences of their actions and the impact of choices that reverberate through generations. Returning to the question of Cain's wife, the simplest answer remains that she was likely one of his sisters or a niece. Such a relationship may seem unusual or even troubling today, but in the early stages of humanity, with Adam and Eve as the first parents, this was a necessary part of the story's development. And by examining this question, we are drawn into a deeper understanding of ancient culture, family, and the unique circumstances of biblical history. What's particularly fascinating about these early stories is the way they explore both individual actions and communal consequences. Cain's act of violence set in motion a chain of events that would influence the entire human story. His exile, his fear of others, his building of a city, all these actions speak to the ways that humanity began to grow, adapt, and change. In this way, the biblical narrative not only gives us a record of human origins, but also a profound insight into human character and resilience. As we move forward in this exploration, consider how these ancient stories resonate with our own lives today. Cain's fear of exile, his struggle with jealousy, and his eventual founding of a city remind us of the universal struggles people face with family, responsibility, and personal legacy. And through Cain's journey, we also see God's continued involvement in human affairs, not always as we might expect, but always with a purpose that unfolds over time. And there we have it, the beginning of an answer to the mystery of Cain's wife. It's a question that brings up much more than lineage. It invites us to examine the complexity of human nature and the depth of divine patience. We're only getting started on this journey into the origins of humanity and the mysteries within the Book of Genesis. As we continue the journey through these early biblical events, the story of Cain opens up even further, revealing layers of human complexity, resilience, and moral struggle. After being exiled and establishing his own life, Cain's narrative reminds us that early humanity was about more than survival. It was about navigating relationships, ethics, and faith, all while seeking purpose in a world filled with both beauty and challenge. Let's revisit the story where we left off. Cain, carrying the weight of his actions, has been cast out. He has settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. The Bible mentions that Cain found a wife, had a son named Enoch, and founded a city. These details offer a glimpse into the evolution of human civilization, from isolated families to organized communities. But one lingering question remains. Who was Cain's wife? Most biblical scholars agree that Cain's wife was likely one of his sisters, or possibly a niece. In Genesis 5:4, it says that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters, suggesting that their family was extensive, even if not every member was explicitly named in the text. Cain's story gives us a unique view into the early generations of humanity, where intermarriage between close family members was likely necessary for population growth. The historical context is key here. Marriage between siblings or close family members was not unusual in ancient societies. These early generations of humanity were building from the ground up, and so what we see as unconventional today was, in the context of the time, both logical and necessary. Later on, as humanity's population expanded, these familial boundaries would evolve. But in Cain's time, there was a practical element to his choice of a wife. This wasn't simply a matter of who was available. It was a means of survival, community building, and establishing the foundational blocks of civilization. As Cain continued his life in the land of Nod, he became a builder, founder, and creator in his own right. The Bible mentions that Cain built a city, naming it after his son Enoch. This act of founding a city holds profound symbolic weight. Here, Cain, the man who had strayed far from his family and the first teachings of Eden, attempts to create something lasting, a city that will endure through time. It's a reminder that even after his mistakes, Cain sought to build, create, and contribute to the development of human society. His city represented a new start, perhaps a chance for redemption in a world now tainted by sin, but still capable of beauty and meaning. This city also suggests a shift in human society from simple family structures to larger, organized communities. It wasn't just a place for Cain and his immediate family. It was the beginning of a shared human experience with social dynamics and collaboration. The mention of Cain's city signals the beginning of civilization, a place where families could gather, resources could be shared, and traditions could form. While the Bible does not offer details about this city, we can imagine it as a place where humanity began experimenting with communal living, perhaps marking the start of societal norms, trades, and customs that would become foundational to human life. The introduction of other characters, such as Enoch and later Lamech, Cain's descendants, marks a continuation of humanity's development, even in a world where innocence has been lost. These descendants carried forth the legacy of Cain, each building upon the lessons and the struggles of those who came before. For example, Lamech, a descendant of Cain, is described in Genesis as taking two wives, Adah and Zillah, and introducing metalworking and music. This diversification of skills shows us that early humans were far more than simple farmers and herders. They were creators, innovators, and dreamers. Their talents laid the foundation for the development of arts, crafts, and industries that would shape human culture for generations. And yet, as human society grew, so did its challenges. Genesis 4:23-24 tells us that Lamech, Cain's great-great-grandson, spoke to his wives about an act of violence, saying, "I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times." This speech introduces a complex view of justice and retribution, one that echoes Cain's original violence but amplifies it. Lamech's words suggest a growing human tendency to escalate, to take matters into one's own hands, and to seek retribution. It's a reminder of how unchecked emotions, pride, and anger can lead us down destructive paths. Lamech's declaration also reflects a change in the human psyche, where personal vengeance and survival begin to define relationships and interactions. It stands in stark contrast to the ideal of peace and unity in Eden. The original harmony has been replaced by conflict, competition, and struggle. Yet even as these negative forces emerge, so do signs of progress, creativity, and resilience. Humanity is adapting, learning, and evolving, and with each new generation, people are finding new ways to understand themselves and their place in the world. Returning to Cain's story, we find that his journey reflects a fundamental truth about human nature, our capacity for both failure and redemption. Cain's story could have ended in exile, despair, and aimlessness. Instead, he becomes a figure of resilience, someone who, despite his mistakes, goes on to create, to build, and to shape his surroundings. His founding of a city, naming it after his son, reflects an enduring hope and a belief in legacy, a desire to leave something meaningful even after a life of hardship and error. This aspect of Cain's story is deeply resonant because it highlights the human drive to make things right, to seek forgiveness, and to build something new even after failure. It reminds us that no matter our past, we have the potential to create a better future. In Cain's city, we see the possibility of growth after loss, a new beginning forged in the wake of tragedy. Cain may have lost his place in Eden, but he found a way to contribute to the world in his own unique way. His story challenges us to consider how we, too, can find redemption and purpose even after our own mistakes. The themes of exile, family, and new beginnings in Cain's story are ones that we can all relate to. Whether through personal mistakes, difficult choices, or struggles with relationships, we have all experienced moments of distance from our true selves. Yet, like Cain, we are offered opportunities to rebuild, to start anew, and to create something meaningful. His life is a reminder that human resilience is a powerful force, and that even when we feel lost, there are paths forward. Now, what about Cain's mysterious wife?